Gentleman right down the back, and then I'll come to the lady just here, and the one in orange, and then I'll come across this side.
Hello? Okay. Over the last couple of days here at Garma, and of course over the last year and a bit, every time I talk to young people, especially young Indigenous people, about constitutional recognition, one of the biggest things that they often say to me is that, what is the Constitution? So what is Recognise doing in terms of campaigning on the ground Indigenous community, young people, about informing them not only about the Constitution, but what is happening in terms of constitutional recognition?
I guess that's to me, because of my day job. Well, we do have a really active youth campaign called Recognise This, and it's led by young Indigenous people, but it includes all young Australians, and I think that's something that we should feel really proud of, actually. It's led by Pete Dawson, who's probably here somewhere. Where are you, Pete? Are you here? Can you stand up and dance around or something? And Charlie Sue Frail, who has been here, but she had to leave early this morning to join the Journey to Recognition. So there is an active youth campaign, and that will be as successful as young people like you and others who decide to join it. I'm really confident that the youth campaign is probably going to be one of our strongest assets at the end of the day, and there is real capacity for young people to get involved. One of the things I think is also going to be a positive byproduct, that through this process we're going to be incredibly lucky to see young people learn modern campaigning techniques. So for whatever comes next, this can be led by young Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people with real campaign experience. But I just really encourage you to get behind the Recognise This movement.
Thank you. I want to preface what I'm going to say by saying I absolutely and totally support everything that's been said. But I think one of the things we haven't talked about is the language of the media and the importance of language in our general campaigns. And I think the colour of the media is so clouded by the debate about people who are coming to this country as asylum seekers that it brushes off into the society. And that's why I shake my head when you talk about the generosity or the caring of the Australian people, because I think on a one-to-one basis that's absolutely true. But I think the language is such that we are not generally a caring people any longer unless we get the language changed within the media. And I guess that's part of your job, John, with your committee. And I'd just like to comment on that. Thank you.
John, do you want to respond?
Yeah, look, thanks. I think that's a really interesting insight, the way you've put that together, and I'll certainly mull that over. You're making quite a profound point. And as I said, I despair of the evidence of self-interest, and can I be frank, I think, I'm not one now, so I can say it, but as a former politician, we play to it a bit too much. We actually encourage people to say, vote with your hip pocket nerve, look after your own interest. There was a marvellous article in the Sydney Morning Herald a couple of years ago, how should we vote? We ought to think about, perhaps we should vote for our neighbour. You know, love thy neighbour. Perhaps we should vote for our neighbour, not just for ourselves. And, you know, there's something to be said for that sentiment, if you sort of get what I'm trying to say. And maybe we can use this very campaign as a powerful tool to say to the Australian people, generosity of spirit is something we've been known for. Let's rediscover it, reignite it, take it forward to a new step. But can I, look, my great failing in common with the breed that I used to be part of is I do too much talking. Can I just say that what I think Tanya and I'd love to hear, because we're meant to be taking hearings, is ideas from you, and thank you for that, because it goes right to the heart of what I'm going to ask you for. Give us your ideas on what we can better do to raise the awareness and the acceptance of what we're about here today. Give us your ideas as Australians, because we're looking for them. We don't have magic answers, can I tell you that? I despair of the difficulty of getting a rational, sensible, calm debate up. You know, there's the old saying wrongly attributed to Voltaire, I may disagree with you, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. Implicit in that is two things. We ought to respect the other person enough to say, I'm not going to attack you for your ideas. We respect you enough to say that you put your ideas on the table and we'll debate the idea, not attack you. And we need to rediscover that in this country. We really do. So what are your ideas on how we can raise awareness, if I may be so bold, so that I don't do so much talking?
All right, let me come to the lady there in orange, and then I'll come across this side now that there's a few hands on this side.
I have a related question. My comment is that it's been very disappointing for a lot of people, I think, over the last decade in Australia to see the success of fear-based campaigns in politics. And one of my concerns is that the no agenda will raise a very, very strong fear-based campaign. Are you aware of the basis of what that campaign may hold, so that we can have the conversations with people to discuss those issues, and to diffuse their fears?
I'll go to Shane quickly and then I'll come back to
Well,
Tanya.
related to that and to the previous question, I think there's too much power in the media controlled by one man who lives overseas. Simply, that's the case. And who has an agenda. And Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander affairs should not be what the opinion pieces are written in the Australian newspaper. I mean, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander affairs should have a multitude of voices. But the concentration of media in this country and the line driven, and we saw that in the last federal campaign, regardless of how you voted. I mean, look at the Courier Mail and the Daily Telegraph for a start. The front pages and the unfair and unbiased. So if we get a News Limited campaign that doesn't like the terms and wording and specific detail of the constitutional referendum, they will give opportunity and the voice to the naysayers, and we'll see arguments falsely put that say, for example, a proposal to prohibit racial discrimination is simply an implied incorporation of a Bill of Rights in the Constitution, and then they'll run a campaign. And we'll see it. You can see it already coming through with comments made by certain conservative federalist jurists, as well as lawyers, as well as those people who are running. And you can see it now in the media. And News Limited, for example, is giving voice to that already.
Right, Mark?
Look, Tanya might like to say something this on behalf of the panel as well, but I think the great danger is that the right-wing Conservatives, some out of genuine motivation and some out of a desire to kill something, will focus. No one will argue with the removal of the race powers. No one talks like that anymore, and nobody's going to stand up and say, I think the race powers should remain. At least, I can't imagine anybody doing that. But the problem will be that, when we move to what do we do to put something about some Anti-Discrimination Act part into that as a substitute for the race power, there will be people who will say that gives rise to the opportunity for judicial activism. And subconsciously, perhaps without a higher level of understanding, I think a lot of Australians kind of get that. They think judges are there to interpret the Constitution, not try and make it or mould it or take it further or subtract from it. And that I think, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, is where legitimate and illegitimate concerns will come from the Conservative end of the spectrum on it. And I have to say to you, I don't have a neat answer to that question, and I haven't yet met anybody who does. Now, our panel is not there to rule on wording, but in terms of the readiness of the Australian people to embrace the change, it is, I think, Ken, fair to say, you're struggling with it. We're aware that it's critical to the issue of broad-based acceptance, that we don't leave some great loophole, that people who are both well-motivated, some of them will be, we need to recognise that in this debate, and those who are ill-motivated can use as a massive wedge against constitutional recognition. So those of you who are brilliant constitutional lawyers, this is one of the areas where I think we're all struggling, because what I've noticed, this used to happen in politics, my good friend Fred Cheney will remember this, sometimes on the most difficult issues, the wisest heads in the land would have totally opposing views. And that's what's happening on this issue.
just from the recognised perspective and the no case arguments and the circling and all of those sorts of things, we're on it. We're watching it carefully, have been from the start. I mean, there's some consistent things about referendums anyway that people will always stick to. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Everything's ticking along nicely. Why take the risk? What real difference is it going to make? And then there are going to be some really, really ugly elements to this. And a couple of people, an Aboriginal man here yesterday said to me one of his concerns is that he's fearful about the ugly race conversation that's going to arise from this, and he's concerned about that. I mean, you can go to our website and you can find material to help you have those conversations with people to calm them down. But one of the assets that the no case is that they don't have to tell the truth. They can just say whatever they want. And so it's actually up to all of us to carry some of that work, but also just be really confident that there's a great many people within the recognised movement, and not just the staff, the people who've been working on this for a very long time, who putting a great deal of thought into this, working on it all the time. And there's some people who are ready to be convinced that this is something that they can really put their support behind, and we've been talking to them for 2 years. And so we're not necessarily going to wake up one morning in Nirvana where everybody's on board and they've parked all the negativity. But it is a journey, and John's right. Some people don't support constitutional change because they don't support any constitutional change. It's not just because they don't like blackfellas.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think there's an assumption out there that that's the only reason people would not support this. So there is a lot of work to do, but what the campaign has to do publicly is talk about the stories about why this is important, why it's going to make us as a country a better place for everybody, rather than give more oxygen to the ugly element of this. And so there's times and places to tackle those arguments, and it's our job to support the people that are going to be doing that work, because that's hard and it's uncomfortable and it's hurtful. And so the other thing we've got to remember to do is really back in and support the people that are leading that work. Because sometimes I watch some of those people doing that hardest stuff and they're out on a limb on their own, and we forget to support them. We forget to tell them that they're doing the right thing by all of us and offer to help them. So we need to think about what we can do, but also let's just resist giving that absolute ugly element any oxygen.